How's that, guys? Can you hear me now? It didn't automatically unmute. So, what's up, Karen Bell? What's up, E-Potty? What's up, Charlotte Durner? How you guys doing? Give me a yeah. Okay, good. We're good now. Normally, it unmutes you when the intro's done. So, all right. So, what we're going to talk about before we get into it, I'll just kind of give you a little sort of intro into what we're actually going to talk about. The thumbnail said SHTF, which is an acronym for shit hit the fan. And it's sort of a well-known term in the quote unquote prepper world. And while I'm not an expert at crisis or emergency preparedness, I did learn a little bit about it, and I'll get into that, how I got into it, how I got exposed to it, and then we'll go over some slides and we'll talk about it. And I think it's an important thing for people to consider because I know a lot of people who might be prepared in the sense that maybe they have camping gear or they have lanterns or, flashlights. It's the basics for, say, a camping trip or going quote unquote off the grid a little bit, a little bit of water. Maybe they even have a water filtration system. But most people don't really consider what can happen if things go right. E-potty, a bug out bag, a go bag, a get home bag, depending on how you look at it or who you speak to. But a lot of people don't really consider what could happen. Now, you can't live your life in fear of something crazy happening, but having the basic elements of preparedness, I would recommend at the very least for everybody. So, and again, we'll get into that in more detail. And hey, R.S. Layton, how's it going? Welcome. Sean Marie, how you doing? Welcome. Good to see you guys. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of it, like I said, I'm gonna get into how I got exposed to that stuff. And I'll start by discussing the most peripheral ways that I even came into contact with the prepper slash SHTF types of content online. So I have a lot of friends and coworkers over the years that go shooting. They go to the shooting range. And over the years, they would always ask me, hey, we're going shooting tomorrow. Do you want to go? And I would just be I'd always had stuff going on the weekends or my days off. So I never really got into it. And I wasn't a gun owner. I didn't have anything against guns or people that own guns. It was never a political issue to me. And so I never went with them for years. Over years, they would ask me all the time, and I never went. In fact, I never even fired a firearm till probably, let's see, man, what year? Maybe like 2019, believe it or not. I just never thought much about it. I spent my money on guitars and motorcycle stuff. So basically, what happened was some of you know this stuff about me, but I'm just going to give a little background just for continuity, and it leads into me getting exposed to the preparedness stuff. So I went through a breakup and I wanted a life change. And so I decided I was going to go back to school and get my graduate degree in pursuit of becoming a psychotherapist. So this was before COVID. So you actually had interviews like old school, right? You applied to the program and then you go for an interview. And so I did that process and I got my appointment for the interview, and it was the location was in Denver, and it was in a far, like, eastern sort of the eastern part, way eastern part of Denver. And it was an area that was where the old airport in Denver used to be. So it was sort of like this small area that was kind of industrial, and it was surrounded by a different residential areas. You guys following me so far? All right. So I promise it all ties together. So I ended up going for my interview, and I had never been to this part of Denver before. Or if I did, it was like 20 years ago or something like that, more than that. So I ended up having to cut through an inner city part of East Denver. And I went through that area, and it was a really bad area. It was a really suppressed area. It was just a really bad area. And so I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm gonna be if I decide to go to school here, I'm gonna be coming through this area all the time by myself, to and from, at different times, at night, and what have you." So I thought maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to get a firearm and get my concealed carry permit. So that's what I that's decided to do. Now I got accepted to the program, and again, this is before COVID. So this would have been like maybe maybe late fall of 2019, or maybe it was late winter or early spring. It was before COVID. That's all I remember that much. And so I end up getting accepted, and it's in Denver, and it's classes were Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Now I live kind of far from Denver, so I had to make arrangements to find a place to stay. And I had a buddy who lived in Denver who had a finished basement, and I worked out an arrangement where I would basically, "Hey, what's up, Brandy? How's everybody doing here?" I'll go peek at the chat here and there. So I work out an arrangement. I'm going to be staying on the weekends at my buddies. I kick them some cash, and then I drive back home on Sunday nights. So I was all in. I got accepted to the program, was ready to go, and then COVID hits. So now everything's in an upheaval. So right before shit got really weird, I went and took the class for my concealed carry permit, which, knowing very little about those classes, I registered for a tactical handgun class. So basically, I was right out of the gate thrown into having to do tactical drills and stuff for the class. And then you get your little certificate, and then you have to file the paperwork to get your concealed carry permit. But now COVID has hit. So now I'm all right. What am I going to do about school? Because there's talk all over the place about, you know, is it going to continue as is, or is it going to be switched to an online program? So that's basically what happens is they switch the program from an in-person regular program to online, but live. So live Zoom classes, not like an online program. So I decide, you know what? I'm already all in, so I might as well just go through with it. But then my buddy, who was a working musician in Denver, there were no gigs during that time because of COVID. So he ends up deciding to sell his house in Denver. So now I have, you know, I'm right on the cusp. If they didn't move to an online platform, I would have been in a jam to try to find a place to stay before school starts. But they ended up moving it. So anyway, now I'll get into the preparedness stuff. So guys, I just want to make sure everything's still cool with the stream. Everybody can hear me okay. And before I start getting too far into it. So I end up getting, because I got my concealed carry permit, I started watching a lot of um, firearms videos, shooting technique. And if you start looking at that stuff, a lot of those same people do like shit hit the fan videos and prepping videos. And what do you do in a crisis? And what supplies do you need? So something that I had never been interested in, never knew anything about, through getting my concealed carry permit and buying a firearm, I ended up getting exposed to all of a sudden all these like ex-military guys and former special forces guys and all their different videos, and then the EDC everyday carry stuff. And then it just expands from there because your algorithm, you look at certain videos, they recommend other videos. So then I got pretty into it for a while because it's COVID, right? Things were weird during that time, and I'm sure everybody can relate to that. So I started learning about being prepared if things go sideways. Like you've if you haven't heard this term, you should look into it a little bit. There's countless videos about it. Grid down situations. And the basis of a lot of those videos and the information about grid down scenarios stem from the idea of an EMP attack, electromagnetic pulse, which can shut down the power grid. And then now I'm not going to lie, it's pretty alarmist if you look at this stuff. Hey, Lulu, welcome. Good to see you. So there's a lot of that. You'll see a lot of that EMP stuff related to shit hit the fan type scenarios and prepper type scenarios. Now, like I said to start out, I'm not an expert, but I did spend time getting certain supplies, having a little bit of extra water in those 7-gallon jugs that you could buy at Walmart. I did, I live in Colorado, so I had camping gear already, but I upgraded all my camping gear. I got outdoor clothes that would function just as something to have packed away. And to what E-Potty had mentioned in the chat earlier, bug out bags, right? You'll hear a lot about this stuff. Bug out bag is like your whatever, whether it's a backpack or a messenger bag or a tactical bag, duffel type bag, is essentially if you have to bug out, the things you would need for a few days, right? Now we're not going to get into a long-term crisis type of situation in this stream. If you guys want, my handler got information on that as well. But that would make the stream a little more convoluted to do both and long. So we can do that in a follow-up video because that's a whole other scenario, a long-term survival situation. Very different, which I learned about that as well. But for this, we're going to talk about what happens in, let's just give some examples. We're not going to get into a full grid down scenario. That would be potentially a more long-term type of scenario, but it relates to what we're going to talk about. If there's a major blackout is a big one, power outage. So you have no electricity. You After a certain amount of time, you might not have water services because the generators might be down after a certain amount of time. You're not going to be able to use your ATM. You're not going to be able to get gas, food, supplies. And if you are not near a water source, then you're going to be in desperate need of having a water source. So that's one scenario. A blackout, a natural disaster. That's another scenario. There are many examples. And at the end, I'm also going to do a few slides, not a lot, just on what about a civil unrest scenario, a financial collapse, some type of martial law situation. Now, why am I talking about this stuff right now? Well, look at the state of the world. I've talked about this before. The power structure clearly wants to implement more and more power. And let's see, Soft Touch Productions, how's it going? Welcome. They want more power. Lucy Morningstar, what's up? Welcome in. Good to see you. So just think about this. If a power structure, government, however you want to frame it, elites want to impose martial law, we've all heard of false flags. It's a very real thing. We know that they've happened in the past. Let's say they want to create a martial law scenario, or they want to create civil unrest so they can impose martial law, crackdown, quote unquote emergency situations. During COVID, things could have gotten even more sideways during that time with lockdowns and people, the grocery stores getting bombarded and supply chain issues, right? If you have supply chain issues and you can't get food, you can't get supplies, you can't get medications. So these are all things that we're going to address. And then, like I said, at the end, I'm going to do a little snippet on like a civil unrest shit hit the fan scenario. So if anybody before I get into more specifics, does anybody have any comments about how much they might know about preparation? Have you heard the term shit hit the fan in this context before? Here, let's see. It's easier for me to read them on screen. Yeah, 19 seems just like a test. I don't know what happened there, guys. I got kicked off for a second. Maybe they don't want me talking about this stuff. Give me a one in the chat if you can all hear me fine, just to make sure there's no drama with the audio. Yeah, I've watched his videos, Canadian Prepper. I watched a lot of those people. All right, good. Audio's good. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it kicked me out, but all right, cool. Everybody's listening. Jeff H is here. What's up, Jeff H? He's going to throw down, man. I can feel it. Jeff H is ready to throw down. So think about this, guys. We all know these scenarios happen. We have been fortunate in America in the sense that aside from the Civil War, the Revolutionary War before that, and things like 9/11, those types of things, or domestic terror threats, we haven't been a part of the world that's riddled with actual boots on the ground war. Now, we have a lot of what I believe is related to fifth generation warfare, which is information and technology war. Um, hey, let's say hello to a few more. What's up, Karen Bell? I think I already said hello to you, but no talkie before coffee. Welcome. So these are things that are scenarios that we should all have the bare minimum preparation for. I think that we're in a situation now. Oh, I must have missed your previous content, Lulu. You giving me shit? Is that what you're trying to tell me, Lulu? Anyway, so we're going to get into the basics of it. Supplies you should have, how you should be prepared, the different, not only supplies, but mental preparation for these types of things, because it doesn't do you any good if you have the supplies, but then you panic if shit goes down. You can't panic because you're not going to, there's no way you're going to function as efficiently if you're in a panic mode. And if you're prepared for something, even if it is highly unlikely that it will happen, if in your mind you are prepared, even the basics, then when something happens, you're going to be that much more calm than someone who has not done any planning whatsoever. All right, let's see. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I don't sit around and worry about it, but I am not going to lie. I went through a period of time stemming from all the COVID stuff that I was on edge and probably over vigilant about stuff because I knew what was going on with that. So anyway, let me see here. I'm going to pull up, bear with me here. I'm going to pull up some slides. Does my handler want to come up on stage? Handler, let me know. All right, here we go. All right, this is what I want right here. So I'm going to throw up this, just a presentation. I'm just going to go through it. I don't really like reading off of slides, but it's good to go through it because in this case, it talks about specifics, scenarios, and supplies and things like that. So let's go. Let's get into it. All right, so I'll try to make it as visible as possible. All right. SHTF, also known as Shit Hit the Fan, and Emergency Preparedness Kit Essentials. So I'm just going to take this chat down real quick here. So, comprehensive guide for basic SHTF and emergency scenarios. Survive 72 hours to 2 weeks. So, before I dig into the slides, I didn't do massive quote unquote prepping because I don't have the storage space to do it. But I did get extra supplies. I did get emergency, non-perishable food. I did get camping gear, and I have countless quote unquote bug out bags and get home bags, which a get home bag is more if you're out somewhere and stuff goes down, just enough stuff with you to get home. And whether you're pro gun or anti-gun. This is irrelevant here because I don't give a shit about politics, and anybody who knows that who's watched my content knows I couldn't care less about this side versus that side nonsense. So let's look at the first one. Water is next to oxygen. It's the number one priority because you can survive without food for a reasonable amount of days, but you can't survive long without water. So 1 gallon per person per day minimum, 14 gallons per person for 2 weeks. Now, take into consideration, if you're in a higher elevation area, you need a little bit more. And if you're going to be engaging in physical activity, you would need more. Like, for example, if you live in the mountains and to quote unquote bug out, you would have to hike and go up to higher ground or something along those lines. You realistically would need more water. So water filters. Now there are different types of water filters. We're not talking about the Brita water filters, the home type things. These are water filtration so you can drink natural water sources, streams, lakes, rivers. And I have a Life Straw. I have two. I have one larger water bottle with a built-in filtration system, and it also filters out microorganisms. So that's a big difference. And I have a small little portable one that's like a collapsible water bottle. Purification tablets, I have that. Collapsible water containers, I have that as well. I have a couple of those. So that way you can store when they're empty, you can fold them up, put them in your backpack. And then when you get to a location where there's water, you can fill them up. But they can be transported easier. So true, without safe water, that's first and foremost. Again, next to oxygen. And we can in another episode, we can get into the more tactical stuff if people are interested, but I will touch on that a little bit in this stream as well. Yeah, I see Giardia is one you don't want to deal with, R.S. Layton. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, you can't go long without water, a couple of days, but you can go a lot longer without food. It's not going to be fun, but you can survive. I'm talking about, getting into How to with Doc. I think I have watched that one actually. I've watched a lot of them. I don't really watch them anymore because it does put me in a heightened state of awareness, and I'm already very vigilant as it is. So but it's good to know. It's good. If anybody in the chat has channels to recommend, please do recommend them because I remember I watched, God, there were so many, and it's been a while since I watched that stuff. Canadian Prepper's a big one. He's one of the bigger prepping channels. There are many others. I got into watching a lot of, if I think of the names, I'll let you guys know. But there were a lot of other like ex-military guys that did more like the tactical aspects of a crisis situation. Let's see, Ipati, the ones that the booby trap their yards. Yeah, versus zombies. You guys remember how there was nothing but zombie apocalypse TV shows and series and movies and apocalypse movies? See, that's what I would call predictive programming. They want everybody on edge. Leave the World Behind, Civil War, countless other types of movies like that. It's you got to wonder, do they want us all on edge? All right, so food stuff that's non-perishable that can be stored for a while. Canned meats, peanut butter, rice, pasta, oatmeal. They are all in Philly. Yeah, they are all in. Freeze-dried meals, protein bars, canned vegetables and fruits, powdered milk, coffee and tea, of course. A manual can opener. And I'm sure we're gonna get into this as well. Multi-tools, are key to have at least one really good multi-tool. So light and backup power. LED flashlights, headlamps, lanterns. I have all of those things. And there's a saying that the military guys say, two is one, one is none. So you should have two of critical things because if one of them fails and you only have one, you've got nothing. Extra batteries in all sizes. These are all things I have personally done. Solar lanterns. And what I would also recommend, you see there's like power stations and solar. There's actually portable little power banks that have a solar panel on them, but you got to be careful because a lot of them you buy online are garbage and they die. They don't last long at all. The really good ones are expensive, but you can get the ones that have the fold out solar panels, things like that, that you could actually be home and power some of them, your refrigerator and appliances, utilizing them, but those are much more expensive. Obviously, car chargers and DC inverters, generators. I mean, if you have a desalination mechanism, then you can, filter seawater, but that would probably be a more complicated process or a more expensive piece of equipment as far as I know. Alright. So, car charge generators, obviously, you have the diesel powered and gas powered generators. They're also that's like the most common thing, and, uh, most people have them. A lot of people do. And then, of course, you have, like, the solar powered and those types of generators are pretty expensive. So I've looked into all that stuff. So, we've all heard of the NOAA weather radio. I have one of those hand crank radios that has a little solar panel on it. It also functions as a power bank, and it'll pick up, um, radio. It's like an old school radio with an antenna. And so I have one of those, and they give emergency alerts. And mine also has an AM FM radio, and it'll pick up local signals when the power is out. So there's a lot of options for that stuff and a lot of price ranges. Two-way radios. Now I have both a pair of walkie-talkies. So if you have a group, you can communicate. And I also have one of the two-way radios that picks up the different frequencies that you need a license to transmit over. And I actually had started an online class to get my radio transmitting license, like ham radio, low power radio license, but it was during a time when I was really, really busy. You can still listen to those radios. You just can't transmit without the basic license. But I have one of those, and you can get them on Amazon. There's tons of different ones. Some of them are a lot cheaper. The better ones, obviously, they're portable, and they're usually the better ones are very heavy duty and waterproof and shockproof, but they're more expensive, anywhere from $200 to $600 for a handheld one. Even the super high end ones are even more. Then you have the cheaper ones that are anywhere from like 75 to 200 bucks. Mine is not a crazy good one. It's like average middle of the road one. So when digital networks are out and there's no internet, there's no phone cell service, there's no landline service, these types of radios, and you want to have ones, obviously, so that you can connect the cable to a charging source, whether it be a solar charger or a power bank, or whatever. You want to make sure that you have the capacity or extra rechargeable batteries or whatever for those radios. Okay. So first aid and medications. This is really important as well. So you want to make sure you have a comprehensive first aid kit with bandages, gauze, antiseptic tape, and I'll get into in the end of this presentation. I'll talk about more like tactical stuff, like a trauma kit. That again, that is going to apply more to like a scenario like wartime or civil unrest type scenarios. Pain relievers and a thermometer, your prescription medications, at least a 2-week supply minimum. Antiseptic wipes and wound care, disposable gloves, and sterile dressings, right? This is pretty straightforward to want to address this stuff. Philly, did you want to come up and talk about any of this particular stuff, since that's your area of expertise and certainly not mine? So I'm going to bring my handler up here and we're going to pause from this for 1 sec. You there, Philly?
I'm here. Hi, guys.
Did you have any comments about this portion of things?
I do, because I think this portion's usually often overlooked. People have to remember an infection can easily kill you if you don't treat it right. One of the places I like is called the Wellness Group. You can actually order a bundle, and it has your antibiotics and stuff that you would need in a situation where you can't go to a pharmacy or a store. They're really worth it. They usually have some really good sales around the holidays. So I would encourage people to at least have one on hand.
And you guys, when the COVID stuff and right after COVID, during that time period, like I have to take thyroid medication. And I'm not even that hardcore into that stuff. And I really wasn't, compared to a lot of people, but I was stockpiling my thyroid medication, limiting my dose so I could save like 1 dose a week to stockpile in case shit went sideways and I couldn't get medication. So I was like taking this stuff pretty seriously for a while. And the medical and first aid type stuff is very important. I mean, I even went and bought a trauma kit and more serious types of first aid treatments. So this one is really significant depending where you live. I live in the mountains. If stuff ever went sideways during the winter, it's a whole different ball game, because you need to have really warm clothes that are reasonably lightweight, really good boots. Gore-Tex stuff is always great, because Gore-Tex stuff is not necessarily always the lightest clothing, but it's good in pretty much all conditions. Waterproof, it's breathable, it's expensive, but it's very functional. You want to have extra blankets and sleeping bags, which I invested in. I actually bought like a small backpacker's tent for like now I had some of this stuff already because I live in the mountains. I had a backpacker's tent, and then I was like, I'm gonna go all out, and I got like a heavy duty, like military grade, larger tent that would be, if shit really hits the fan, for more of a long-term type of scenario. I have all the, multi-layered stuff, great, Gore-Tex boots, which, I have that stuff anyway because of where I live, but I made sure I had the supplies just in case. For the summer, battery-powered fans, electrolyte packets, that's a big one. If you're in a high elevation area, you get dehydrated like twice as fast. That's why if you ever went from sea level to higher elevation, you have one drink and you're drunk because there's less oxygen. Also, every breath you take dries your lungs out. It sucks moisture from your lungs because it's drier in the higher elevations. So you want to, it's kind of annoying because I live here and I still have to drink a ridiculous amount of water every day to the point where it's annoying. So you have to be aware of that stuff in different environments. If you're in a really hot and humid climate, or you're going to be out in the sun, you actually want to be covered. You want your head covered. In really hot conditions, you want your head to be covered. It's counterintuitive if it's really hot, but the sun beating on you, first of all, you'll get sunburn, which will really dry you out, and you can get heat stroke. But it also helps keep you cooler. So just another thing to consider, like you take a hat, you soak it in water, put it on your head. It helps draw the heat away from your body. All right, shade supplies and cooling towels. That goes into a little bit of what I was just talking about. Now, let me just maximize this for a sec. Never use grills or generators indoors, obviously. Now, I wanted to just touch on this. You guys may have heard me talk about this. There was a serious blackout where I lived last week. It lasted for about 14 hours. Now, 14 hours is like, oh, that's no big deal. But depending on your situation, depending on where you live, things can get weird in a reasonably short amount of time, especially if you're in a really densely populated area, because that magnifies the chaos factor. And so I didn't panic or anything, but still, your refrigerator's not working. I had to put stuff in a cooler with cold packs, perishable stuff. And thankfully, my freezer, nothing thawed out overnight, and my cooler kept things cold overnight. But if it goes longer than that, that's why you really have to have non-perishable foods and canned foods and things like that. You can go online and find emergency food, and they come in either these cans, and it's like freeze-dried foods, or they're in pouches. Like Mountain House, I believe, is one of the big ones. There's a lot of different ones, and there's a lot of companies that sell that stuff. Just keep that in mind. All right. Yeah, shoe goo, RS Layton. Things to repair your shoes. I mean, to me, that stuff, which I looked into, all of that is more long-term stuff. If like you're talking about like serious bug out, like in a grid down scenario. So I'm going to read this slide, and then I want to have some people maybe throw up some questions or whatever if they want. Cooking and cash essentials, right? Your ATM cards and credit cards aren't going to work in a power down situation. So it's always good to keep some cash on hand. It's always good to have that. And any prepper type person will tell you that, or precious metals, things that you can use if shit really goes sideways that you could barter with. fuel canisters, waterproof matches, lighter. I have all that stuff. Manual can opener, cash and small bills and coins. I did all that because obviously electronic payments will fail during outages if you can even get to a store if they stay open. Where I live last week, all the stores closed. Cash or not, they closed, which is not good. Yeah, small bills is the way to go for obvious reasons, right? Because then you don't want to only have large bills, and then you're not in a scenario where you can't barter with that, or else you'll end up having to pay more for stuff. And if people don't have enough change for you, you end up spending more. And do keep your gas tank full. At least half a tank, no talkie before coffee said. I do that, guys. I never let my gas tank in my car get below half. I usually try to keep it at least 3/4. And if stuff in the world is getting weird, like this shit on the news and there's a domestic terror threat and blah, 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 I make sure my gas tank is full. Not because I believe them, what they're saying, because that could mean there's an incoming false flag, in my opinion. All right. Ipati, this brings up a good point. Now, here's where it gets a little controversial. I've read numerous survival books by people that are supposed experts. I have ones from former Navy SEALs. I have ones from military guys that are supposed to be experts in this. And I have countless audiobooks I've listened to. Some of them will tell you that bugging out is not always the way to go. Another thing is you'll hear this, and we'll get to this in a later slide. The whole quote unquote lone wolf, where you're by yourself and you just bug out with a extra large backpack and all the gear you're going to need to survive, say in a grid down scenario. Now that's a tough one to determine whether or not you would want to do that, for the simple reason that, think about it, what would be the way to increase your chances of survival? Well, let's look at history. Let's look at ancient history. We all started in hunter-gatherer societies, smaller groups. A tribe might be 100 to 150 people. Or if it was a nomadic society, there might only be like 30 to 50 people. If you get quote unquote ousted from your tribe, then your chances of survival diminish. So one of the things you'll read about in like the prepper world is a mutual assistance group. This is where people have a group that they plan to work together if shit goes sideways. So that's why having communities that you're a part of is really beneficial in a crisis situation, because bugging out sometimes is not the best way to go. Now, if there's an immediate threat of violence in your direct area and you don't have the type of security to protect yourself and your family and your loved ones, then you might have to bug out, so to speak, or you might at least have to get to another location. So it all depends on the circumstances. That's why I recommend people do their own research on this stuff and figure out what would work best for them. A compass, a map, a good compass. Remember, there's little crappy ones you can buy on Amazon for nothing. But if you'd have to learn how to use a real compass. But again, that would be more in a more critical bug out situation. And I have like survival books, like survival field manuals. I have a small one and I have like a bigger one that you can read in advance. And they tell like a wilderness survival one, the SAS manual is like how to hunt and how to, if you have to, this is like survival situation. And again, we're not going to go that deep into it here, but these are things that are a part of that community, like the prepper community, survival community. I looked into taking a military survival course. Like I got pretty serious about it. Yeah, hunkering down is another scenario. And again, it's a controversial subject. Another theory is if you're in a city area, they recommend that you make friends or try to make an arrangement with like a farmer out in the country that will allow you to stay on their property if shit goes sideways, and that you'll work and you'll contribute or whatever. I mean, this is getting more extreme, but this I've read that stuff. Self-help. What's up? Good to see you. You know, making a fire is a big one. I have those fire starters, and I also have those rainproof, waterproof matches. I mean, we could go real hardcore and I could like literally lay out all the stuff that I have and talk through it. But this is really just a cursory dive. It's not a deep dive. Cursory dive into some basics. One of it, like I said before, you don't want to panic. Yeah, of course, R.S. Layton, like if you look, think about this, guys. There's a lot of doom and gloom in the prepper world, and it's scary some of the things that they talk about because it's not something that everyday people would ever really think about or be confronted with. Jeff H, what does Jeff H have to say? It would be cool to see a video of all your critical gear laid out on the floor and then how to pack it. Yeah, I mean, I went through. I'll just touch on that real quick because things got weird starting in spring of 2020 going forward. I thought, all right, well, what are potential scenarios? I wasn't prepared at all prior to that. So I had more of a long-term setup, like a trunk that you can lock to store certain things in, food, ammunition, extra batteries, survival knife. I have, more than one survival knife, multiple decent multi-tools, one really good one and a couple of just cheap ones, multiple pocket knives, multiple flashlights, different types of flashlights, rechargeable ones and battery powered ones. I have a large, like a military backpack that would be for like longer bug out scenario. And then I have like really high quality, like camping, like 65-liter camping backpack, really good one. The one I have is by Mystery Ranch. You can get that at REI. There are many brands. There's a million brands. You can watch tons of videos on that stuff. So I have different things. I have like bags if I was like keep something in my car, because just living in the mountains, you could get stuck in a mountain pass because of an avalanche or closures because of an accident, and it's freezing cold and dumping snow out. You might get stuck on the highway for longer periods of time. Your car breaks down. on a mountain road and it's dumping snow out, it's freezing out. I would keep in the winter a sleeping bag, an extra blanket, snacks, extra warm clothes. I always have a water bottle with me, but I always keep extra water in containers. Basic things. So I have different levels of bags to use. I have a communication bag with walkie-talkies and the little portable ham radio. I have a lot of different supplies that would be used for different scenarios. But again, I'm not an expert, so people could actually go to different content creators that are experts, like former special forces guys and survival experts. Yeah, there are so many different scenarios. I just wanna Story Keeper, how's it going? 4M, where are you at? Yeah, the chat's getting away from me. Live on, welcome. So this you guys get the picture, right? There's a lot of different scenarios that you could deal with in different ways. But I'm kind of going off a little bit. We're going to keep going with the slides, but I'm getting more into like possibilities. But this is really basic stuff that we're touching on here. So, hygiene and documents. Hygiene, toilet paper, trash bags, baby wipes, hand sanitizer, soap, toothpaste, 2 week supply per household member. Documents, waterproof copies of IDs, insurance, medical records, emergency contacts and property documents, encrypted USB backups stored off site. I have one of those little bulletproof little USB drives that you can use to save information on. Security and tools. Good locks. This is more for sort of staying put in case of a scenario where you have to stay put and shit goes sideways. Battery alarms, emergency whistles, neighborhood communication plan. That kind of ties in with the mutual assistance group. Tools, multi-tool, duct tape. Duct tape is great. Rope, paracord. I have paracord, which is really durable and it comes wrapped up. Work gloves, an adjustable wrench, fire extinguisher. Again, these are, a lot of basic stuff. Entertainment, if you don't have access to the internet and things like that, playing cards, board games, books. Now, again, you have to consider if you're home, you have more options. If you're on the road or bugging out or whatever, you have to think more portability. Notebooks, pens, coloring books for kids, knowledge base, printed first aid guides, local maps, emergency phone numbers, family emergency plan, basic repair manuals. A good GPS is really good because if you're not getting cell service, that's another one because some of those have like emergency beacons on them and things like that. A family emergency plan, basic repair manuals. All right, so a practical checklist summary. Water, a 2-week supply, shelf-stable food, and a manual can opener, flashlights, batteries, and power banks, solar charger and backup power, NOAA, weather radio, first aid kit and prescription meds, blankets and sleeping bags, camp stove and fuel. Anybody who camps usually has that. But I would recommend you have a portable one, like a smaller one with a little burner on it, and then one of those like double burner, larger ones for like if you got to go outside and cook because if your stuff inside your place is not working, the portable ones are not going to be as good for that. first aid kit and prescription meds, blankets and sleeping bags, camp stove and fuel, cash in small bins, hygiene supplies, important documents, basic tools and fire extinguisher, entertainment and knowledge materials. Extra considerations, pet food, meds, leashes, vaccination records, medical equipment, backup power, contingency plans with providers, work and children, paper maps, printed contacts, battery clock, like a battery powered clock, review supplies 1 to 2 times per year. It's hard to be disciplined and do that, but it's good to go through your stuff. And sometimes certain types of food, like I would have like olive oil because I consume a lot of olive oil in my diet. That stuff you want to check it to make sure it's still good if it's been in storage for a while. Store kits where every household member can find them. So stay prepared, stay safe, prepare today to stay safe tomorrow. Now we're going to get into the next thing that I added onto this, which is what do you do in a shit hit the fan scenario in the case of like civil unrest? Again, in these times, this stuff is not that out there. So it's good to consider that. So I'm going to go and look at the chat a little bit here before I get into this one, because this is just a short section. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm missing comments. No, Ipati, I didn't see that show where they put strangers together in a post-apocalyptic world. I don't watch. Is it on a streaming platform? Because I don't watch mainstream TV. I don't even have cable, and I don't even watch that much of the streaming shows. I do, some documentaries, and occasionally I'll watch a series, but I mean, that kind of stuff is really popular, so I could see that, and it's kind of a cool idea. You gotta wonder though, is that predictive programming? So let's see. Oh wait, I'm way behind on the chat. All right, so like when the Knicks won the championship. Yeah, I'm gonna look at the Discord stuff when I get a chance, Potty. Written Dreams, what's up? How you doing? Thank you. Yeah, Brandy J, join the State of the Deep Discord, please. Philly will post the link for the Discord in there. So, hey, handler, do you want to come up on stage again? And when we start talking about this stuff here a little bit? Yeah, if you want to jump up here, I'll put, you should be still up on stage. So you there?
I'm here.
So I added this little thing here in the case of it's just a short section. If shit gets squirrely related to like civil unrest type of a scenario. So the most basic thing is, guys, situational awareness and mobility. Know your exits, multiple evacuation routes planned, keep vehicle fueled. Like we said, minimum of a half tank always. I like 3/4 of a tank. Bug out bags, 72-hour essentials ready to grab. Avoid crowds, protests, and choke points. Yeah, you want to stay away. Think about this. We're all inclined to want to know what's going on, but the best way to avoid any drama, if shit starts to get weird, you have to stay away from people you don't know and situations where things can get out of control, because you have crowds can, you can get like a mass contagion type of situation where like the mob mentality develops and people get out of hand. Travel in groups, never alone at night. Gray man principle. So that the idea of a gray man, there was that series on, I think it was Netflix, or that movie, The Gray Man. It was based on a book series. The idea of a gray man is not a guy who's wearing all tactical gear and tactical boots and a tactical backpack and all that. It's a gray man gear is like you blend in. That's the idea of a gray man type of a thing. So you could have like a tactical backpack that doesn't look like one. You could have outdoor hiking boots that don't look like tactical boots. You could be wearing, you could have bags with a concealed carry pocket for a firearm, things like that. That's like the gray man principle. Philly, you have anything to add to that?
Mhm.
Any thoughts to piggyback off of, or things that I should talk about?
I'm looking over. No, I mean, these are all excellent points. I do keep extra propane on hand as well. I don't know if you guys saw in the news. So on Saturday in Philly, right in the city, not in a very good area, they had what was called a microburst. It was intense. They first thought it was a tornado. So we have a big area right now that is out of power. They're flooded. It just there was no preparation for it. So all these things are always good to have on hand because things can happen at any time.
Yeah, and that's an example of something you wouldn't expect that happens. And things can get weird. I lived in Brooklyn during the famous blackout. What was that, 77? Was that 1977? The big blackout in New York. I was there for that. We lived in Brooklyn at that time. I was too young to understand what was going on, but that was a major one. And in a city, if you don't have a community around you that you can trust, things can get, sideways really fast.
Yeah,
So,
and it did because it was not in a very good neighborhood that this happened in.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are on edge already. And so it doesn't take much to set people off. So home security and defense, reinforce. Now, again, this is more specific to home. Reinforce doors and windows, deadbolts, security bars, board up ground floor windows if a situation escalates, motion sensor lights and battery powered alarms, establish neighborhood watch and communication plan. Now, again, that's where community comes in. Designate a safe room with supplies, self-defense tools, and legal options for your area. Supply chain collapse. So this is more, again, I'm talking about a more extreme situation. But we had that to some degree during COVID, right? People were getting weird. We all know what that was like. It was, everybody was on edge. Everybody was paranoid. Everybody was freaked out. So you want to have like extra supplies. So I'll give you an example. This is where my mind goes. During that time when I was putting together a more long-term like trunk, shit hit the fan trunk, I got a bunch of different bags of coffee, ground coffee, and I put them in a trunk because think about it. If it got real, and again, I wasn't thinking that this was going to happen, but if you want to be prepared and you have the room for it and the capabilities for it, then do as much as you can. So I was storing like snack bars and bags of coffee because think about it. If shit goes sideways, you can use that to barter with people for something you need. Most people drink coffee or tea, right? We talked about this: medications, hygiene products, and fuel are currency in that type of situation. Cash and small bills, we talked about that, because ATMs and the banks likely will be offline. Precious metals, I mentioned that, for longer disruptions. Build relationships with neighbors now. Community is survival. Now this is tougher if you live in a transient area, which I do, because I'm near like resort areas where a lot of people are transient. But again, you have to have your network of people. Communications, we talked about this, a ham radio. Now, here's the thing about that. You can still listen and use the radio to get different emergency channels and hear other people communicating. This is my take on it. Yes, you need your ham license to transmit on those low power radio frequencies. However, if it is an emergency situation, I'm not telling you to do this. And again, I didn't even put my disclaimer up in the beginning. This is all just my opinion. It's for educational and entertainment purposes. This is my opinion. This is just my theories based on what I know. If it's an emergency situation, I can assure you the last thing that the FCC is going to be worried about is in an emergency scenario, people transmitting over a radio frequency. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you my thought process. And without a license, you can still listen on those channels. So in normal circumstances, I'm sure it's something you don't want to mess around with, but that would be the equivalent of like pirate radio, right? We've all heard about pirate radio. You guys remember that movie, Pump Up the Volume, with Christian Slater, where he has this little pirate radio he does out of his room? That's kind of what that would be, an unlicensed radio station on low power radio frequency. So you'd want to, if you have a mutual assistance group, you would walkie-talkies, so everybody would have walkie-talkies within closer distances, and more of a little higher powered radios to transmit over certain frequencies for longer distances. If you're in the mountains, you need bigger antennas. Now you can get a handheld radio and attach it to a long antenna in a stationary spot that goes up to a higher point, or you can buy the screw-in extended antennas, because in the mountains you're going to be blocked. Radio frequencies get blocked depending where you are. Signal mirrors, whistles, visual markers for rescue. This is all survival type gear. And keep a written log of events. These are all, again, this is all a little more extreme stuff. The number one survival tool is your mindset. Like we started off saying, stay calm. Panic kills faster than any threat. Plan now while things are stable. That's what quote unquote prepping is, being prepared. Train skills, first aid, navigation, fire starting, self-defense. Now self-defense. I added that because let's say, if you're okay with the idea of owning a firearm, you should learn how to use it. You should train with it. So if you get your concealed carry permit, or you're just going to use it for home defense, you still should train to go to shooting ranges, to know how to use it and be comfortable with it. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL or a sniper. If you're comfortable with it, it's repetition. That's how you get comfortable. And it's good to train. And it's good if you have any, martial arts of self-defense training, which I have just because of I have a martial arts background. It's good to know that stuff. But I would say I don't like thinking about these types of things, but the reality is it's good to have some training in self-defense and build your tribe. This is what I touched on earlier. Lone wolves don't survive long. A lot of the survival experts will say the idea of a lone wolf, who bugs out for long term out in the wilderness. If you ever read Into the Wild and saw the movie Into the Wild, it's a great book. It's a John Krakauer book. I recommend it. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it. Into the Wild, you probably know the movie. Eddie Vedder does the soundtrack for it. Sean Penn directed it. It's a great movie. It's really, really good. But the kid wants to go out into the wild, and he ends up bugging out into the Alaskan wilderness, and he ends up dying of starvation because the theory is that he ate some plants that were poisonous. He mistook them for an edible plant, and he got sick, and it incapacitated him, and he died of starvation. So prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Again, I said it earlier, I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I'm just trying to illustrate the importance of being prepared. And it's better to have the basics so that a small situation doesn't turn into a big critical situation. Now, you can get as serious as you want. I would recommend that you don't get too crazy about it, but that pretty much wraps up the presentation. I just think, yeah, he starved to death, Ipati. Like I was saying, he he ate some plants that he had the little flora and fauna guide, and he ate they believe, this is what they believe, that he ate a plant that was poisonous. He mistook it for an edible plant. He got really sick, dehydrated, and he got too weak to go get food and water, and so he died. But here's the thing. He did the lone wolf thing, and most survival experts will tell you that is not the way to go. So keep that in mind. All right, Jeff H. Jeff H, it's good to see you, buddy. Yeah, don't go camping with Brian Laundrie. Good tip, Jeff H. Yeah, and I'll tell you guys, I was not like an outdoor survival expert or major outdoor enthusiast or anything like that. That's why I looked into taking a SEER training course, which is like the Air Force teaches us for like if a pilot gets shot down, survival, and civilians can take those courses. I seriously looked into that stuff, but they're expensive, the good ones, and they're time consuming. You got to get the time off, and you usually have to travel to where they are. Yeah, don't eat cats, eat potty. Cattails are bad, so are eating cats is bad too. And I want to shout out True to It. Welcome in. I was neglecting the chat earlier, so I just want to say hello to everybody, and I thank you all for coming in. Live Levon. Cats rule, dogs drool. Do you guys ever see that video? It's hilarious on YouTube where it says like the cat comes home to owner after being gone for whatever amount of time, and the owner's like, "Oh my god," and the cat just like runs towards him and just walks right past him. Pretty funny. All right. Sweet Melissa, good to see you. Jeff H. See, where I'm at, there are creeks and rivers not too far from where I'm at. And while we're in a drought here, I think I'd be able to fish some fish out. And, I have like a small light tackle fishing setup. That's always one to consider if you live near lakes and streams and rivers. I don't hunt. I have a lot of friends that do. I've never hunted. I mean, for me, it would be like shit would have to get really dire if I had to go into the wilderness. But I have the capabilities to do it if I had to. It wouldn't be pretty, though. Brandy J says, we do that anyway, Jeff. Squirrel dumplings. I've never tried that one, Brandy J. Sounds really tasty. Squirrels are cute little animals, so I'd feel bad taking out a squirrel. Yeah, Canadian geese, if you're a good shot, you can get you some gourmet dinner for sure. See, what I would think is, fishing is, I think most people could bring themselves to catching fish and cleaning and cutting up fish if they had to before they would be ready to shoot an animal and skin it and gut it. That's a little more. You have to know what you're doing there. Nothing against anybody who eats squirrel. You can make a squirrel hat out of the skin. That's true.
My dad used to eat squirrels with his eggs. He used to catch them in the backyard.
Oh, that's
It's
lovely.
gross. I know, but people like it. I
don't know if I'd be down with that. Liv Levon says, my man is a hunter. Look, I eat meat, so I have nothing whatsoever against hunting. I just haven't gone hunting personally. I'm not against it, obviously, because I eat meat. So, but let's see. During the Depression, an old friend ate a lot of squirrel. Yeah, I mean, I've heard some stories, man. I never ate the squirrel, but I have ate the deer he would hunt. Fish too. If you've ever had elk, it's so good. So good. Elk meat is the cleanest meat. I mean, you eat elk and you feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. I'm not even joking. It's so good and so good for you. Oh yeah, eat potty. You can catch a bird on a string. It happens. They're kicking around by the water. You cast your line, or they swim across your line. That could happen. Camilla, what's up? It was in a jungle. Yeah, see, I've never watched that. There's so many damn shows on streaming platforms. See, you ate squirrel, Sweet Melissa, you ate squirrel stew. Look, here's the thing. Everything changes when you're in a dire situation or how critical things are. If you're hungry enough, you eat whatever you eat. I mean, that's just reality. It changes you. That survival gear, that survival mechanism clicks on, and you do what you have to do. I can tell. So I'll tell you this. Because I was a lifeguard, an ocean rescue lifeguard, I had to take advanced life saving. And then once you get hired with an actual beach town, lifeguard crew, you have to get trained for ocean rescue. It's a totally separate designation. Advanced life saving, like pool lifeguards, have to get that. So you used to have to get that first before you took the beach test. And then if you passed that and you got hired, then they would give you the USLA, US Lifeguards Association test, which is it's training based on ocean rescue stuff. And you learn, and we some of the guys that created our quote unquote curriculum were Navy SEALs. And back when I did it, before the liability was like a big issue, it was crazy, like the things you had to do, like not in a good way. So you had to learn how to be cool under pressure, because think about it. And this applies to this whole scenario about survival. If you have to go rescue somebody, number one, the water, depending where you live, can be very cold. Right? Even in like May, the water in the Northeast is damn cold in May. So right there, you're throwing in that the ocean, which is it's wilderness, it's Mother Nature. You don't have control over it. You could have big waves, you could have undertows, side currents. There's all kinds of things that you have to worry about. And if you're going to rescue somebody, they're panicking. You can't panic. You have to be calm to calm them down, right? Because trying to rescue somebody that's panicking, you put yourself at risk. So you have to stay calm. That's like a critical part of any survival situation. So you have to stay calm. And if you train your brain for possible scenarios and you're prepared, like you can't just expect to be able to save somebody in big waves if you haven't trained to do that. So if you have training in things and you've mentally trained for it, then when the situation arises, you're not going to freak out. And it's just the reality. You just have to be able to be calm as much as possible. True to it. No, I don't think I could eat squirrels either. I don't know. But if I had to, you never know. I'd do what I had to do. All right. So I'm going to tell you guys about a crazy movie. There's a movie. I think it's a French movie. It's called Decline, that I came across on, it was maybe Netflix. It was one of the streaming platforms. I'm sure you can find it. And it's about this guy who teaches survival. So he's like, it's either a Canadian movie, it's in like French Canadian movie, and it's subtitled, or it's in a French movie. I can't remember, but so this guy has a compound out in the wilderness, and he teaches survival. So they have the movie starts where basically these people are all checking in to take this survival course, and it shows the different people, and you get to know the characters a little bit, and then he's teaching them survival stuff, like how to skin a squirrel or a rabbit. I think it was a rabbit in this movie, and firearm skills, hunting, self-defense, things like that. And then shit goes sideways in this movie. I'm not going to give away what happens, but I highly recommend you watch it. It's either The Decline or Decline. It might be The Decline. I highly recommend it. Cinderella Ella, what's up? How you doing? Good to see you. Oh yeah, I must have missed that comment. If you're asking Gramilla about that movie, I think it's called, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but I was talking about The Decline. It's either The Decline or Decline. I think it's The Decline. And it was surprisingly good. I was surprised. It gets crazy. I would highly recommend you watch it because it ties in with exactly what we're talking about. I don't, Cindy, I can't remember if it was, you could easily Google it. And it was either Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, I think. One of those three. Okay, Netflix, The Decline. Thank you, Philly. I would recommend you guys watch that because it ties in with the whole shit hit the fan type of scenario and not panicking. Anyway, yeah, I would definitely recommend you guys watch that. Yeah, I recommend it. It's good. What's Paradise? I've heard of that. I've heard of that. Another one that kind of reminds me of a similar thing. You guys remember the older movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he finds that group. Yeah, I don't know that show Paradise. I have heard of it though. I'm not sure what it is, but it reminded me of that movie The Beach, where Leonardo DiCaprio is in like I don't know, Thailand or somewhere like that, and they go to this party on this like remote beach, and he ends up meeting this group that's basically started this like secret little society where they have their own little encampment, and they have this little society that they've created away from the rest of the world. That's a good movie, actually. And again, that speaks to, it kind of reminds me of things like Lord of the Flies, and I would argue it's probably was influenced by Lord of the Flies. People get squirrely, when they get real territorial and they try to, the book Animal Farm, which I want to do an episode about in the near future. So, Brandy J just got back from Phuket. Street markets sell odd creatures as food. I believe it. Yeah, there's so many movies that tie in with this sort of like societal collapse and survival situations and how things can get crazy in different circumstances. I mean, think about war, just war. I mean, you're all of a sudden you're a person living your life, and then it's back in the days when there was a draft. Next thing you know, like for example, with Vietnam, you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, and you're just being told this person is the enemy. This is not the enemy, this is the enemy. You don't know who you can trust. You're thrown, you don't even know why you're really there. Yeah, right. Any book and movie recommendations? Please, everybody, like and subscribe as well, because I really need to build my channel. And if you join the Discord and you like and subscribe to the channel and like the videos and share it, if you think somebody who would like it, like the content, we're gonna do a variety of different stuff. Anybody who's ever heard me talk, I talk about different things. Sometimes I'll go off on tangents and talk about something that's totally unrelated directly, although I would argue that there's connections between everything that I talk about. And we're going to also have streams where we just shoot the shit. where we don't talk about, where I'm not like presenting information. Like I always say, we're all capable of researching things and doing our own research and, being more informed. So my handler demands that you all join Discord. You can you can post like movies and TV show recommendations and book recommendations. And I have done book recommendations. In fact, I think I posted just a basic book recommendation list on the community tab of my channel on YouTube.
JJ, I added that list on Discord, guys. If you go on Discord and you go over to book recommendations, JJ's list is there, and some other people have already added some more books that they recommend. So you guys can check it out over there on Discord.
Yeah, you guys. I learned a lot of stuff through, over the years, like reading different books and watching documentaries, and like not necessarily documentaries on a streaming platform, but just independent documentaries on YouTube or wherever, or that were made by content creators online. I remember seeing, this is years ago, I found it online just randomly. It was a documentary, a totally low budget, private, privately made documentary called Monopoly. And what it talked about was how this handful of global investment banks own everything. Now, years later, I learned more about BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and all the other big, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, and then all these other big investment banks. But like, for example, I talk about BlackRock. There's Blackstone. For people that don't know, Blackstone used to be the parent company, and then BlackRock came out of Blackstone, actually. And if you look at the holdings that BlackRock, for example, has, they have either majority controlling shares or significant influential shares in every major industry on earth. You name it. Fuel, food production, big pharma, big tech, any major sort of institutional component of society, they own a lot of shares. And so this documentary was called Monopoly. So like, think about it. I'm just bringing that up because sometimes these documentaries are not, you have to go digging for them. You have to know what questions to ask to find the information that you're looking for. All right. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat here. Yeah, being tribal, I just threw that up randomly. It's in our DNA, right? It is literally in our DNA. And I remember in college doing research for a professor, and there was one of the studies that I had to look into, or one of the areas of study, was people's political ideologies. And there has been a lot of psychological research on that over the years. And like, for example, there's a theory that people are basically genetically predisposed to be whatever you say, conservative, liberal, etc. And tribalism is a big part of that. If you get into evolutionary science, silent weapon. Yeah, why do I know? Is that silent weapons for quiet wars? Unbridled form. What's up? How you doing? Is that a recent thing? Somebody just recently recommended that to me. I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb and take a guess that that has to do with fifth generational warfare, but I have not seen it yet. But I already know what it's basically about: psyops, propaganda, information wars, things like that. Let's see. Oh yeah, yeah, Karen Bell. I think you posted that on Discord, right, Karen? I saw that list, and I told you we're gonna definitely I'll utilize that stuff in the future. We'll do episodes because I've already talked about psyops. I've already talked a little bit about other related things. I'm going to be doing releasing a video, a pre-recorded video on Monday, related to the quote unquote the Matrix, the illusion world versus the more scary and threatening quote unquote real world. And I'm just going to kind of riff on that idea of a matrix. And then we're going to also talk a little bit about, if not in the pre-recorded, on a live, we can discuss it and talk about the whole blue pill versus red pill versus black pill versus white pill, and kind of touch on that idea and those concepts. It's not about psyops. So is it like bio warfare? Is it because that's another thing that comes to mind without knowing anything about that? Yeah, I mean, Sean Marie, I don't have a lot of storage. I do have a garage, so I do have storage in there, but I have tons of shit in there. So, like real preppers, like they have bunkers and shit, and like, or they live on out in the remote rural areas, and they have like sheds and barns or storage cellars, things like that, to store tons of stuff. That's like more hardcore. Some people build bunkers. Remember, wasn't there a show? There was like when the people building bunkers and stuff. Um, yeah, oh yeah, about engineering a society. Yeah, well, that's social engineering in my opinion, is related to psyops. Anytime you want to change people's behaviors or how they think, I just blanket that under psychological operations, but social engineering is very much a part of that based on what I know. I'll definitely have to look into that more specifically though, because I like that kind of stuff. Focus, attention, trials, emotions equals psyop. Yeah, I mean, if you look at who funded a lot of psychological research, it was the military and the advertising industry, going way, way back. You guys remember the TV show Mad Men? They would have the research. Oh, did you get the research? They would have psychologists and these research firms that would do market research for them and that kind of stuff. Interesting. All right. Yeah, I don't know that one. No talkie before coffee. Did you go? What was that movie with? What's the name of it? It's just at the tip of my tongue, with John Goodman, where he like basically he's holding the girl hostage in a bunker. And that movie reminds me of, did you guys see that series? Have you seen the series on Apple TV called The Silo? If you want to talk about psyops and social engineering, that's a great one. It's dark, but it's a really good one. Like Tim Robbins is in it. If you guys haven't seen The Silo, it's a great one. Cloverfield, yeah, that's Itty Potty. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of with John Goodman. It gets into some wacky stuff, and that the reason that I just thought of this, The Silo, it's because of Cloverfield. If you guys haven't watched The Silo on Apple TV, it had like a couple of seasons at least. I think it's still going on. I would highly recommend it because it's very relevant to the big picture and the idea of like a matrix and psyops and social engineering. It's really good. The girl from The Office. Which girl from The Office? Um, yeah, I haven't watched it in a while. Um, yeah, I'm not sure which Office, the American one or the UK one. But anyway, you guys should watch that. Potty, I'm assuming you've seen The Silo. I never I don't know that I ever watched the British version of The Office, the original, but I used to love The Office with Steve Carell, and that was a funny show. Yeah, that's a really good one. Many years ago, I started learning about medicinal herbs, weeds. If a person can learn about the medicinal herbs, no person go hungry. Yeah, I mean, look, the ancient wisdom, the Rockefellers had a lot to do with this. They basically demonized ancient wisdom for the modern medical model and the modern educational model. But ancient wisdom, the more you learn, the more you realize they knew a lot. It's a false, faulty logic to assume what's newer is better or smarter. I don't agree with that at all. In fact, I think there's generational ancestral wisdom, and some, I believe, in older societies when people were less distracted by extraneous BS, they were more tapped into that stuff, like Native American cultures and many different indigenous cultures. That's not to say that certain things were not beneficial, like they may not have been ideal for people's survival and survival of certain cultures, but there were certain things from ancient cultures that got basically thrown out because maybe they weren't as profitable. I don't know. Yeah, the holistic doctors, right? It's like the truth tellers and the philosophers of throughout history were always demonized. People that created an environment that would stimulate an awakening among people, they were often demonized or killed. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of look, I mean, I'm not an expert in that area, but I've always kind of been somewhat familiar with what used to be called like holistic medicine and like functional medicine and things like that. Because I am not a fan of the big pharma medical model, because that's basically who runs the whole healthcare industry. Yeah, you guys are I'm sorry, guys. I'm not First of all, I have progressive lenses on my glasses, so I have to, like, tilt my head a certain way to be able to even read the chat. So, Liv Levon says, "I had a friend, his dad had stage 4 colon cancer. He saw a holistic doctor and did some form dandelion treatment and went into remission." Look, this is the shit that the big pharma doesn't want citizens to know about or talk about. It's not profitable. I mean, that's reality. That's the world we're living in. And why I always talk about how a lot of the subjects that I speak about, I may not spell it out how it's connected, how they're all connected. It's not hard to draw the lines between the different things that I talk about. I'm not saying that every single topic I ever discuss is connected, but I think that in my opinion, it's all about the power structure, who really controls things, what governments actually are, as opposed to what we have been told they were, what the intelligence agencies, what universities, what school, what the medical industry, the food production industry. You remember the 4 food groups, right? All these different things. So this is exactly the stuff that I'm going to be addressing in my little quote unquote matrix video that's coming out tomorrow. I'm going to release it at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, I altruistic murder. What's up? How are you? Yeah, I remember this. This was sort of a thing that you did. People that came from like farming cultures and things, they would give seeds. That's great. True to it. I'm glad to hear that. We live in a toxic world, and it's not just biologically and physically toxic, it's spiritually toxic. Tiggy, what's up? I used to go to a doctor in Aberdeen, Idaho. He treated a lot of celebrities like Michael Jackson, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was arrested for curing cancer and AIDS 5 years and fed. Yeah, sounds about right. I've heard many stories over the years of people who have, you guys remember years ago hearing about like nanoparticles being used for cancer treatment that they would attach to cancer cells, specific types of cells, and then they would do some type of mechanism that would it was almost like radiation, but they would use radio frequencies to excite the nanoparticles that would heat up only and in the specific cells that they attach to and kill the cancer cells without killing healthy cells like chemo does and radiation does, like standard chemo and radiation. And that person got shut down and other people because what it was the guy was he was in the radio broadcasting industry. So he knew a lot about radio frequencies and he was a wealthier person. And when he retired, he started doing research just at home, testing like utilizing nanoparticles and seeing how they interact with radio frequencies and stuff. But that shit all got buried. We all need to realize, that you have to have balance. Like everybody's got their struggles, their issues, their health concerns, their mental health concerns, their relationships and working life and all these different aspects of life that create different types of stress. And with the divisiveness of society now and how it seems like everything is being stacked against the interests of citizens, you have to be aware, but not be consumed by it. Because if you get consumed by it, then you're letting them win. You know, I talked about it. When was it yesterday? Yeah, I talked about it last night. In my opinion, the way to counter psyops or social engineering is ignore them. Ignore them. They can't work if you ignore them. Learn how to identify them also. And then also, citizens need to, we're starting our own deep state here. And for anybody who wasn't here yesterday, the chat for State of the Deep is now called the Deep State. So if you're in the chat, you're part of the Deep State and you're a statey. All right. Let's see. All right. Well, we got a few more minutes. I wanted to thank everybody again for coming, or even if you just popped in for a little bit or late. Again, please like and subscribe, join the Discord. It helps the channel. And going forward, I'm going to try to refine my schedule and increase the frequency that I have videos. You know, right now I'm going to have the pre-recorded that's going to come out tomorrow, and then another one that'll also come out at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. It's what the last few weeks is what I've been doing. And then I'll do at least 2 lives on the weekend. Next week, it'll also be Saturday and Sunday. Feel free to give feedback either in the under the community tab on the YouTube page or on Discord about what you think the best times are. If I don't have gigs on Fridays, I'll do a Friday stream, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I may be on Birdie again, Birdie Bombshells again on Wednesday. I'm not sure. He and I have been sort of playing that by ear. Birdie's a busy dude, and I've been pretty busy, so it's hard to always lock things down in advance. I think Philly Special put the Discord link in here.
I did.
Yeah.
Hey guys, just please like and subscribe. YouTube has a really, really weird, what do you call that, JJ?
Algorithm?
Algorithm, thank you. So it really depends on, you got to like it like pretty quick after you come into a live, and then stay in the live for it. Their algorithm is weird, but I need you to like it. And then please join our Discord and use that. Give us ideas. Some of you have already put in some great stream ideas that JJ can check out. And just let him know you want him to go live as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the best that I can for now, but I'm gonna try to keep moving forward, and when I'm able to, when I get better at it and more efficient, I will definitely be doing more as much as possible. So I have a kind of a wacky schedule this summer, and so 2 nights a week I can't because I work late. And then I play on certain nights on the weekends and stuff. So it's some limitations. Man's got to feed himself. So I
And
got
if
to
you
do
guys
that
need
stuff.
help in Discord, you can, I'm usually always in the general chat. I have it on my phone too. So if I see you, I'll kind of help you. I can help you guide through it. The thing with Discord, the reason why I'd post it, sorry, JJ, I just want to let them know. The reason why I posted on YouTube earlier, Discord, we can build Discord any way we want. So when I had asked a few days ago, give me an idea what would make it easier for you guys to kind of navigate, give me your ideas, because that's kind of like a blank slate for us. We can build it any way you think would make it easy for you guys to navigate through and be able to chat with each other and, you know, reach out to JJ or myself. But I'm usually always on there. So just let me know and I'll help you.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you to my handler. I think my handler deserves a raise, you know, he really does.
I need hazardous duty pay, guys, but
yeah. Well, look, so I am thankful that you guys are supporting me. It's, you know, we're going to build it up. The whole point is it's not for me to come up here and give presentations. We do that sometimes, just talking through it. But everybody is just as capable as anybody else of reading books and watching documentaries and doing research. There are more books, you know, I recommended a bunch of books. I'm still, you know, reading different books. We've all heard of Animal Farm, really short book, George Orwell. I'm going to do an episode on that. We all talk about our interpretations of it, my interpretations of it. And it's very relevant today. 1984 is very relevant today. So stuff like that, you know, I sometimes get an idea to talk about something. It's not like an idea where I just want to sit and present information. It's to give my interpretations of things. But because I just had that recent blackout where I live, I thought, oh, it would be kind of a cool thing to do with just a really basic overview of preparation for shit getting squirrely. So, yeah, come join the deep state. Well, at least watch the video. It's going to be dropping tomorrow about my interpretation of the Matrix, what it is, and you know, I'd like to get everybody's feedback in the comments. It's not going to be a live; it's pre-recorded, and then we can talk about that stuff in a live. You know, we'll talk about it on next Saturday's live. We can talk about the 2 pre-recorded videos that I'm going to do. So we'll get to all that. And we're going to continue talking about the Sky King with some of the information that people provide on Discord. We can open that up for discussion on a future episode. And we can talk more about more detailed preparation stuff down the line if people want to. So today was just an overview. And again, thanks to everybody. Thanks to my handler. And hopefully I'll see you guys all soon. Hopefully you will join the community. Let's build it up. Create our own deep state. Start creating our own psyops. All right, everybody. I'll catch up with you soon. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.